Bro, I used to think karma was fake. Like, I'd hear people say, what comes around goes around, and I'd just nod like, yeah, okay, sure, until I watched it happen in real time. And I mean real time. To someone who absolutely deserved it. Her name was Kayla. And if you've ever had that one person in school who just made everything harder for no reason, yeah, that was her. Kayla wasn't loud or obvious about it either. That's what made it worse. She was the quiet type, but fake nice. Like she'd smile at you, ask you how your day was, and then turn around and talk about you like you were nothing. And for some reason, teachers loved her. Straight A student, always so respectful, always so helpful. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, completely different person. I didn't have a problem with her at first. Actually, we were cool. Not best friends or anything, but we had a couple classes together. We'd talk sometimes, work on assignments. Normal stuff, until one random Tuesday. That's when everything changed. We had this group project in English. Teacher put us in groups of 4. And guess who I got stuck with? Kayla. At first I was like, okay, whatever. She's smart, this should be easy. Our group was me, Kayla, this quiet dude named Marcus, and this girl Jenna who didn't really talk much. We sat down to plan everything out. Kayla immediately takes control. She goes, okay, so I think we should split the work evenly so it's fair. I can organize everything since I'm good with that. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, yeah, that works. Marcus nodded. Jenna just said, okay. Then Kayla starts assigning roles. She points at me and goes, you can do the research part since you're usually on your phone anyway. I paused for a second. That felt like a little jab. But I brushed it off. I said, all right. Then she tells Marcus, you can do the slides. Then Jenna, you can write the script. And Kayla, I'll just put everything together and present. Convenient. For the next few days, we're all doing our parts. I actually put in work, too. Like I spent hours researching, organizing everything, making sure it made sense. Marcus had clean slides. Jenna's script was solid. Everything was good. So I'm thinking, easy A. Presentation day comes. We all sit down, kind of nervous but ready. Kayla walks up to present. And right away, something feels off. She starts talking. But she's not saying what we worked on. At all. She's presenting a completely different version. Different info. Different structure. Different everything. I look at Marcus. He looks at me like, what is she doing? Jenna whispers, that's not what I wrote. Kayla finishes presenting. Teacher is smiling like she just watched the best thing ever. Then she goes, wow, Kayla, that was incredibly well put together. And Kayla just nods like, thank you. Doesn't mention us. At all. Teacher looks at us and asks, did everyone contribute equally? Before I can even open my mouth. Kayla goes, I tried to include everyone, but honestly I ended up doing most of it myself. Barrow. I literally felt my stomach drop. I said, wait, that's not true. We all did our parts. Kayla cuts me off. She goes, I mean, you gave me some notes, but they didn't really fit the direction, so I had to redo it. Marcus speaks up. I did the slides, though. Kayla, yeah, but I couldn't use them. They didn't match the quality I was going for. Jenna just sat there, quiet. Teacher looks disappointed. At US. Not her. She goes, well, in group projects, everyone needs to pull their weight. Then she turns to Kayla. Thank you for stepping up. We all got our grades back later. Kayla, eh? The rest of us? Sees, after class, I walked up to her. I said, why would you do that? We all worked on it. She looks at me, completely calm, and goes, I care about my GPA. I'm not risking it on group work. I just stared at her. She wasn't even sorry. That's when I realized. This wasn't a one-time thing. This is just who she was, and I should have left it alone. Honestly, should have just taken the C and moved on. But nah, because what she did next, that's what started everything. And that's when karma really started keeping track. After that project, I told myself I was done dealing with Kayla. No more helping her, no more talking to her unless I had to, nothing. But the problem was, she wasn't done. A few days later, I'm sitting in math class, just minding my business, and my phone starts buzzing like crazy in my pocket. I check it under the desk and it's Marcus. He sent like 5 messages in a row. Bro, did you see this? Check Google Classroom right now. She did it again? My stomach already dropped before I even opened it. I go on Google Classroom and there's a new assignment posted. But that's not what he meant. There was a comment under the last group project from the teacher, and under that, a reply from Kayla. I open it. She wrote, I just want to clarify that I completed the majority of the work for this project. I don't think it's fair that others receive the same grade when they didn't contribute equally. I literally whispered, you've got to be kidding me. She didn't just lie in class. She put it in writing, where everyone could see it. Marcus texts again. She basically called us useless in front of the whole class. Jenna finally said something too. She wrote, that's not what happened. Kayla responds almost instantly. I'm not trying to start anything, I'm just being honest. Some people didn't take it seriously. I could feel myself getting heated. So I replied, we all did our parts. You changed everything last minute and didn't tell us. There's a pause. Then she types back, because it wasn't good enough. Not it needed edits. Not I adjusted a few things. Straight up, it wasn't good enough. Marcus jumps in. You didn't even use my slides. You never said there was a problem. Kayla, I didn't have time to teach everyone how to meet basic standards. That's when people who weren't even in our group started liking her comment. And that's when it clicked. She wasn't just trying to protect her grade. She was trying to make us look bad. On purpose. In front of everyone. Marcus looked exhausted. Not just tired, like actually drained. He kept tapping his phone like somehow the messages were going to magically reappear. I told him, relax. There's always something she missed. He shook his head and said, no, she's smart. She covers everything. I was about to respond when someone behind us said, not everything. We both turned around. It was Jenna. She was standing there holding her phone. And for the first time since all this started, she didn't look quiet or unsure. She looked serious. Marcus goes, what do you mean? Jenna sits down and says, I saw what happened yesterday. I lean in. Saw what? She goes, Kayla deleting the messages. Marcus's eyes widened. You saw her do it? Jenna nodded. Yeah. I was in the chat when she started removing things. At first, I thought it was a glitch, but then I saw her name next to the message removed notification. I said, did you screenshot it? Jenna just looked at me for a second. Then she turned her phone around. And there it was. Multiple screenshots. Clear as day. Kayla removed a message. Kayla removed a message. Over and over again. Marcus literally sat back in his chair like a weight just got lifted off him. He goes, no way. Jenna wasn't done. She said, I also screenshotted the messages before she deleted them. Now I'm looking at her like she just saved everything. She scrolls. And we can see it. Marcus's full paragraph explaining his part of the project. The files he sent. The timestamps. Everything. Proof. Real proof. I said, yeah, she's done. Marcus actually smiled for the first time. But Jenna shook her head and said, not yet. We both looked at her. She goes, if we just show this, she'll try to twist it again. We need to do it the right way. I said, what do you mean? She said, we go to the teacher, together, and we explain everything clearly. No arguing, just facts. Marcus nodded immediately. Yeah, okay. So that's what we did. When class started, instead of sitting down, we walked straight up to the teacher's desk. The teacher looked a little confused and said, is everything all right? Jenna spoke first. She said, we need to talk about the group project. There's been a misunderstanding. The teacher looked at Marcus and said, I already received information about that. Marcus said, I know, that's why we're here. Jenna calmly held out her phone and said, we have proof of what actually happened. The teacher hesitated for a second, then said, all right, show me. Jenna starts from the beginning. She shows the original messages. Marcus sending his work. Timestamps. Then she scrolls to the screenshots of the deletions. The teacher's expression slowly changed. From neutral to confused to concerned. She said, these messages were deleted? Jenna nodded. Yes, after Marcus submitted his work. Marcus added, I didn't delete anything. The teacher looked back at the screen, then said, and you're saying Kayla removed them? Jenna said, her name shows up on the removal logs. There was a pause. Then the teacher said, okay, I understand. But the way she said it, you could tell she didn't fully process it yet. She told us to sit down and said she would look into it. Marcus whispered, what if she still believes her? I said, just wait, because something about the teacher's face told me this wasn't over. Not even close. About 10 minutes into class, the door opens, and Kayla walks in, late, which she never is. She walks in all calm like usual and says, sorry, I'm late. Teacher just nods and says, take a seat. But her tone was different. Slightly colder. Kayla sits down, pulls out her laptop, acts like everything is normal. Then about 5 minutes later, the teacher says, Kayla, can I speak with you for a moment? The entire class goes quiet. Kayla looks up, a little confused but still calm. She walks up to the desk, and right away you can tell something's off, because the teacher turns her laptop around, so Kayla can see the screen. Jenna's screenshots. All of them. I watched Kayla's face. For the first time, she didn't look in control. Her eyebrows pulled together slightly. Her mouth opened like she was about to say something, then stopped. The teacher says very clearly, can you explain this? Kayla pauses for a second. Then she says, and I'm not sure what I'm looking at. The teacher points at the screen. These are message deletion logs from your group chat, along with the original messages that were removed. Kayla quickly responds, that doesn't mean I deleted anything. Sometimes apps glitch. The teacher nods slowly and says, that's true. Apps can glitch. Then she clicks something on her computer and says, but they don't usually glitch this consistently, with the same name attached each time. Kayla's expression tightened. She says, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Marcus didn't contribute the way he's claiming. Marcus starts to stand up, but I tap his arm like, wait, let it play out. The teacher says, we're not discussing claims right now. We're discussing evidence. Kayla says, I have evidence too. Teacher, then I'd like to see it. Kayla freezes, just for a second, but it was enough. Because that confidence she always had, it cracked. She says, I don't have it with me right now. The teacher looks at her and says, that's interesting, because you stated yesterday that you had already shown proof. Silence. Actual silence this time. No typing, no whispering. Everyone listening. Kayla tries again. I can get it later. The teacher leans back slightly and says, Kayla, I'm going to be direct with you. Based on what I'm seeing, it appears that messages were intentionally removed after work was submitted. Kayla shakes her head quickly. No, that's not what happened. The teacher responds, then help me understand what did happen. And Kayla had nothing. No explanation. No backup. Nothing to twist. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have control of the situation, and you could feel it. The whole room felt different. Like something finally shifted. But this was just the beginning. Because what the teacher said next, that's when everything really came back around. The teacher looked at Kayla for a few seconds. Not angry, not yelling, just calm, which honestly made it worse. Then she said, I'm going to need you to step outside with me. Kayla hesitated, like she was trying to think of one last thing to say, but there was nothing left. So she just nodded and followed the teacher out. The door closed behind them, and the second it shut, the whole class exploded. Not loud, but like aggressive whispering. Bro, she's done. No way she's getting out of that. I knew something was off about her. Marcus leaned over to me and said, if she somehow talks her way out of this, I cut him off and said she won't. Because at this point it wasn't about opinions anymore. It was proof. And she had none. A few minutes pass. Then 5. Then 10. They're still not back. Even the teacher from the classroom next door walked in at one point and asked if everything was okay. That's how long it was taking. Finally the door opens. The teacher walks in first. Kayla comes in behind her. But she looks completely different. No confidence. No calm expression. Her eyes are a little red. She sits down without saying a word. Doesn't look at anyone. Doesn't open her laptop. Just sits there. The teacher stands at the front of the room and says, we're going to continue with today's lesson. Like nothing happened. But nobody was focused. Everyone kept glancing at Kayla. Waiting. Trying to figure out what just went down. Class ends. The bell rings. And before anyone even gets up, the teacher says, Marcus, can you stay for a moment? Marcus looks at me. I nod like go. He walks up to the desk. Jenna and I stay nearby, pretending to pack our stuff slowly. The teacher speaks quietly. but we can still hear parts of it. She says, I reviewed the evidence. Your grade will be adjusted to reflect your actual contribution. Marcus lets out this breath like he's been holding it for days. Then she adds, and I apologize for the misunderstanding. Marcus says, thank you. Then he asks, what about the rest of it? The teacher pauses. Then she says, that's being handled. That's it. No details. Just being handled. Marcus comes back over and says, I got my grade fixed. I said, I told you. But we both looked over at Kayla. Because she was still sitting there, alone, and something about it felt off, not in a feel bad for her way, just different, like the situation wasn't finished yet. The next day, things got even weirder. Kayla wasn't in class. At first, nobody said anything. But then someone asked, where's Kayla? And the teacher just said, she's not here today. No explanation. No follow-up. Just moved on. But you know how school is. People start talking. By lunch, rumors were everywhere. She got suspended. No, she switched classes. I heard she got reported to the office. Nobody knew for sure, until Marcus got a message. He looked at his phone and went, yo. I said, what? He turned the screen toward me. It was from someone in another class. The message said, your girl Kayla got called into the office this morning with like 2 administrators. I raised an eyebrow. 2? Marcus nodded. Yeah. That's not normal. Because it's not. 1 admin means a warning. 2 means something serious. Later that day, Jenna found us again. She sat down and said, it's worse than we thought. I said, what now? She said, this isn't the first time she's done this. Marcus and I looked at each other. We already knew that part. But Jenna continued. I talked to someone in her science class. She did the same thing last semester. Took over a project, removed people's work, and told the teacher they didn't contribute. Marcus said, and nothing happened? Jenna shook her head. They didn't have proof. That word again, proof. That's what made this time different. Jenna added, if the school finds out this is a pattern, it's not just a grade issue anymore. I said, then what is it? She looked at me and said, academic dishonesty. That sounded serious, like actually serious. Marcus goes, you mean like cheating? Jenna nodded. Yeah, but worse. Because she's affecting other students' grades. Now everything started clicking. This wasn't just about one project. This was about a habit. A system. And now it finally got caught. 2 days later, Kayla came back. And the energy in the room shifted immediately. Everyone noticed. She walked in quietly. No smile. Oh, sorry I'm late. Just straight to her seat. Didn't look at anyone. Didn't say anything. The teacher acknowledged her with a simple, good morning, and kept teaching. But nobody was paying attention. Because everyone was watching her. Waiting. About halfway through class, the teacher stops. Looks at Kayla. And says, Kayla, please stay after class today. And you could hear people react. Not loud, but like small gasps. Kayla just nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't question it. Just nodded. That's when I knew. Whatever happened in that office, it wasn't over. Not even close. Because karma doesn't just hit once. It keeps going. And what came next? That was the part nobody expected. The bell rang, and this time nobody rushed out like usual. People moved slow, dragging their bags, pretending to check their phones, tying shoes that didn't need tying, all just to stay a few extra seconds. Because everyone wanted to see what was about to happen. Kayla stayed seated. Didn't move, didn't pack up. Just staring at her desk. The teacher sat at the front, organizing some papers like it was a normal day. But you could tell she was waiting too. Eventually the room cleared out. Except for a few of us near the door. Me, Marcus, Jenna, and like 2 other people who were definitely being nosy. The teacher finally said, Kayla, come here, please. Kayla stood up slowly and walked to the desk. Her steps weren't confident anymore. They were careful, like she didn't know what was coming next. The teacher didn't raise her voice. She just said, I spoke with administration. Kayla nodded slightly and said, okay. The teacher continued. They reviewed the evidence from this situation, as well as information from previous classes. Kayla's head dropped just a little. Not all the way. But enough. The teacher said, this isn't being treated as a one-time misunderstanding. Kayla finally spoke. Quiet. She said, I understand. But she didn't sound like she actually did. The teacher leaned forward slightly and said, do you? Because removing other students' work and presenting it as your own affects more than just your grade. Kayla didn't respond. So the teacher kept going. You've created a pattern where other students are being penalized for work they completed. Kayla's hands tightened around the strap of her bag. She said, that wasn't my intention. The teacher responded immediately. Then explain your intention. And that's where everything fell apart because for the first time, Kayla had to actually explain herself. No twisting, no shortcuts. Just the truth. She hesitated. Then she said, I didn't trust the group work. The teacher said, not trusting your group doesn't justify deleting their contributions. Kayla shook her head slightly. I didn't think it would go this far. The teacher looked at her and said, but you did think it was acceptable to remove their work and tell me they didn't contribute. Kayla didn't answer. The teacher let the silence sit for a second, then said, administration has decided to move forward with disciplinary action. Kayla's head snapped up a little. She asked, what does that mean? The teacher said it clearly. No group work privileges for the rest of the semester. All assignments will be completed individually and reviewed. Kayla swallowed. But the teacher wasn't done. And this incident will be documented as academic dishonesty. That word hit. You could see it. Kayla's eyes widened just slightly. She said, is that permanent? The teacher answered, it goes on your academic record. Kayla looked down again, completely quiet. Then she asked, is there anything I can do to fix it? And the teacher paused, not in a mean way, just thinking. Then she said, you can start by understanding that your actions affected other people, not just you. Kayla nodded slowly, but it didn't look like the confident nod she used to give. It looked forced, like she was trying to hold it together. The teacher added, you'll also be speaking with the counselor about this. Kayla said, okay, barely above a whisper. Then the teacher said, you can go. Kayla turned and walked toward the door. And that's when it happened. She saw us. standing there. Me, Marcus, Jenna, the same people she tried to make look useless. For a second, we all just looked at each other. No one said anything, but you could feel it. That shift, the roles were completely reversed now. She wasn't in control anymore. She didn't have the upper hand. She didn't even have anything to say. She just looked at us, then looked away, and walked out. We didn't follow her. We didn't say anything. We just stood there for a second. Then Marcus let out a breath and said, "That's crazy." Jenna nodded and said, "It finally caught up to her." I didn't say anything right away, because I was thinking about that first day, that project, the way she looked at me and said, "I'm not risking my GPA," like nothing else mattered, like nobody else mattered. And now, everything she did to protect that GPA was the exact thing that messed it up. Over the next few weeks, things changed. Kayla kept to herself. No more taking over groups, no more controlling everything, because she couldn't. Teachers knew, students knew. The image she built? Gone. And the craziest part? Nobody even needed to expose her anymore. She did it to herself. Every time she cut someone out, every time she lied, every time she thought she was getting ahead, she was just setting herself up. One day after school, I saw her sitting outside, alone, no phone, no laptop, just sitting there. I almost kept walking, but something made me stop. I didn't go up to her or anything. I just stood there for a second, and she looked up. We made eye contact, and for once, she didn't look fake. She just looked tired. She said, "Hey." I nodded and said, "Hey." There was a pause. Then she said, "I messed up." No excuses, no attitude, just that. I said, "Yeah." She looked down and said, "I thought if I controlled everything, I wouldn't have to depend on anyone." I didn't respond right away. Then I said, "That's not what messed you up." She looked up. I said, "It's that you made everyone else look like they did nothing." She nodded slowly, like she already knew that. Then she said, "I get it now." And honestly, I think she did. After that, I left. Didn't need to say anything else. Because the lesson wasn't for me. It was for her. And that's when I finally understood what people meant. What comes around goes around. It's not instant. It doesn't always look dramatic at first. But it builds. Every little thing you do, it stacks up. Until one day, it all comes back. And when it does, there's nothing you can say to stop it. After that conversation, I thought that was the end of it. Like she learned her lesson, everything settled down, and that was it. But I was wrong. Because karma didn't just hit her once. It kept going. A week later, we had another big assignment. Not a group project this time. Individual. And everyone knew why. The teacher made it very clear. She said, "Since there were issues with collaboration recently, this next assignment will be completed independently." Nobody said anything, but everyone knew who that was about. Kayla sat there quietly, writing down the instructions like nothing. But you could tell people were watching her now, not admiring, not trusting, watching, like they were waiting to see what she'd do next. The assignment was big too, like test grade big. A full research paper, citations, sources, everything. And for the first time, Kayla couldn't rely on controlling a group. It was just her. A few days go by. People are working, asking each other small questions. Normal stuff. Kayla? She didn't talk to anyone, didn't ask for help, didn't offer help, just stayed in her own space. And at first I thought maybe she was actually doing the work. But then something happened. Marcus texted me one night. "Bro, this is weird." I said, "What?" He sends me a screenshot. It's part of a document. And I'm looking at it like, I've seen this before. I said, "Where did you get that?" He goes, "That's Kayla's paper. She accidentally shared it in the class folder." I looked closer. And then it hit me. I said, "That's not hers." Marcus goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "That's online." He goes, "Like copied?" I said, "Not even copied. That looks straight downloaded." Because it wasn't just similar. It was exact. Same wording. Same structure. Even the formatting looked like it came from a website. Marcus said, "Should we say something?" I paused. Because honestly, part of me was like, let it play out. But then I remembered everything she did. To him. To Jenna. To me. So I said, "Don't say anything yet." Marcus goes, "Why?" I said, "Because if we say something now, she'll just fix it." He paused. Then said, "So we just wait?" I said, "Yeah, let her turn it in." A few days later, papers are due. Everyone submits. Kayla submits hers too. Confident again. Not as much as before, but enough. Like she thought she got away with something. The next day, the teacher walks in with that same serious look. And right away, I knew. Something was about to happen. She sets her bag down and says, "Before we start, I need to address something." The whole class goes quiet. She holds up a paper and says, "I've come across multiple submissions that contain material not properly cited." People start looking around, whispering, trying to figure out who she's talking about. Then she says, "Kayla, can you come up here for a moment?" And just like that, everyone knows. Kayla freezes for a second, then slowly stands up and walks to the front. The teacher places the paper on the desk and says, "Can you explain where this section came from?" Kayla looks at it and says, "I wrote it." The teacher nods slightly and says, "You're sure?" Kayla says, "Yes." The teacher turns her laptop around, and on the screen is the exact same paragraph from a website, word for word. The teacher says, "This is an online source, identical wording, no citation." Kayla's face drops, just a little, but enough. She says, "I used it as a reference." The teacher responds, "Using a source as a reference means you rewrite it in your own words and cite it. This is not that." Kayla tries again. "I didn't realize..." The teacher cuts her off. "You didn't realize copying an entire paragraph without citation is plagiarism?" That word again. Plagiarism. Now the room feels heavy. Kayla doesn't answer. Because what can she say? The teacher continues. "Given the recent situation, this is very concerning." Kayla looks down, completely silent. The teacher says, "I'm going to have to report this." And you could feel it. That was the moment. Everything fully came back around. Because all those times she accused other people of not doing work. All those times she made herself look like the only one doing things right. Now she was the one getting called out. In front of everyone. With proof. Again. Kayla didn't argue this time. Didn't try to twist it. Didn't try to talk her way out. She just nodded slightly. And said, "Okay, quiet." Defeated. She walked back to her seat. And nobody said a word. No whispers, no reactions, just silence. Because at that point, it wasn't even surprising anymore. It just made sense. Marcus leaned over to me and whispered, "That's actually crazy." I nodded and said, "Nah." He goes, "What?" I said, "It's not crazy." I looked at the front of the room, then back at him, and said, "It's exactly what was going to happen. Because when you spend all your time trying to get ahead by stepping on other people, eventually there's nobody left to blame, and nowhere left to hide. And when it finally catches up to you, it hits harder than anything you tried to avoid." After that day, nobody saw Kayla the same. Not even the teachers. You could tell. Before, they'd call on her, trust her answers, treat her like the example student. Now, they double-checked everything. If she answered a question, they'd pause and say, "Can you explain how you got that?" Not in a normal way. In a "we're making sure this is actually yours" kind of way. And every time that happened, the room would go quiet. Because everyone knew why. Kayla stopped raising her hand. Stopped talking in class. Stopped trying to stand out. She just sat there. Did her work. Turned it in. That was it. A few days later, Marcus came up to me before class and said, "Yo, I heard something." I said, "What now?" He said, "She failed that paper." I paused. "Like a 0? He nodded. "Yeah, automatic 0 for plagiarism." I exhaled slowly, because that wasn't just a bad grade. That was heavy, especially for someone like her. Then Jenna came over and said, "It's more than that." We both looked at her. She said, "My friend in the office said Kayla had to meet with administration again." Marcus goes, "Again?" Jenna nodded. "Yeah, because now it's a second academic issue." That word again. Issue. But at this point, it wasn't just an issue. It was a record. A pattern. Something official. Later that day, we saw it happen. Right in the middle of class. There was a knock on the door. Everyone looked up. The teacher opened it, and one of the office staff was standing there. She said, "I need Kayla, please." Not "can I speak to her?" Not "when you have a moment." I need Kayla. Direct. Serious. The teacher nodded and said, "Go ahead." Kayla stood up slowly. Didn't say anything. Didn't look at anyone. She just grabbed her bag and walked out. And this time, nobody whispered. Nobody reacted. Because everyone already knew. She didn't come back that period. Or the next day. Or the day after that. 3 days straight. Gone. On the 4th day, she came back. But it wasn't the same. She walked in late. No explanation. Just a quiet, "Sorry," and went straight to her seat. The teacher didn't question it. Didn't ask where she'd been. Just continued the lesson. After class, though, the teacher stopped her again. "Kayla, stay for a moment." Same words. Different feeling. This time it felt final. Most people left, but again, a few of us stayed near the door, not even trying to hide it anymore. The teacher looked at her and said, "I'm going to be very clear with you." Kayla nodded slightly. The teacher continued. "Because of the repeated academic dishonesty, administration has placed you on academic probation." Kayla's head lifted just a little. She asked, "What does that mean?" The teacher said, "It means any further violations could result in more serious consequences, including removal from certain classes." Kayla swallowed. Then asked, "Does this affect my grades?" The teacher said, "It already has." Kayla didn't respond, so the teacher added, "You've lost credit for the assignment, and this will be noted moving forward." Kayla just stood there. Quiet. Then she asked, "Is there anything I can do to fix it?" The teacher paused, then said, "You can start by doing your own work, consistently, without cutting corners." Kayla nodded, but again, it didn't look confident. It looked like she was just trying to accept it. As she turned to leave, the teacher said one more thing. "Kayla." She stopped. The teacher said, "This didn't happen overnight." Kayla didn't turn around. The teacher continued, "It built over time, and now you're dealing with the result of that." Kayla stood there for a second, then quietly said, "I know," and walked out. I saw her in the hallway later, standing by her locker, just staring at it, not opening it, not moving, just standing there. I walked past her. And for a second, I thought about that first day again, when she looked at me and said, "I'm not risking my GPA," like nothing could touch her, like she had everything under control. Now, everything she tried to control was exactly what she lost. Marcus caught up to me and said, "That's actually insane." I looked at him and said, "It's not even about the grades anymore." He goes, "Then what?" I said, "It's her reputation. Because grades can recover. But once people stop trusting you, that's different." And that was the real karma. Not just the 0. Not just the probation. Not just the meetings. It was the fact that nobody believed her anymore. Not teachers. Not students. Nobody. And when you lose that, there's no shortcut to getting it back. No way to fake it. No way to control it. You just have to sit there and deal with what you created. That's when it really hit me. What comes around goes around doesn't mean something random happens to you. It means the exact thing you did comes back in a different form. She made people look like they didn't do their work. Now nobody believed her work was hers. She took credit from others. Now she lost credit herself. She controlled everything. Now she had no control at all. And the craziest part? Nobody had to get revenge. Nobody had to expose her. Nobody had to do anything. She did it all herself. Over time. Step by step. Until there was nothing left to defend. And that's how it ended. Not with yelling. Not with some big dramatic moment. Just consequences. Quiet. Permanent. And completely deserved. After that, things didn't go back to normal. Not for her. For everyone else, yeah. Classes kept moving, assignments kept coming, people kept talking and laughing like usual. But Kayla? She was there, just not really part of anything anymore. Group work came back eventually. Not in our class, but in others. And you could see it happen. Teachers would say, "Pick your groups." And people would start moving. Chairs scraping, friends calling each other over. Kayla would look around. Wait a second. Then another second. And nobody would say her name. Nobody would wave her over. Nobody would ask, "Do you want to join?" She'd end up sitting there until the teacher stepped in. "Kayla, you can join that group." Not because they wanted her there. Because they had to take her. One time I overheard it. She sat down with a group. And one of the girls said quietly, but not quiet enough, "Just make sure we keep our own copies of everything." Another guy nodded and said, "Yeah, send everything separately too." They weren't even trying to be rude. They just didn't trust her. At all. That's when it really hit. Because before, Kayla controlled everything. Now she couldn't even be trusted to share a document. Weeks passed, and slowly she stopped trying. Not in a lazy way. More like she just kept her head down, did exactly what she was told. Nothing extra. No leadership. No taking over. No, I'll organize everything. Just quiet. One day after school, I saw her again. Same spot as before, sitting outside. But this time she had her laptop open, actually working. No shortcuts. No copying, just typing. Slow. Careful. I walked past her and she looked up. We made eye contact again. She said, "Hey." I said, "Hey." I was about to keep walking, but she said, "Wait." So I stopped. She closed her laptop halfway and said, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "What?" She hesitated for a second, then said, "Do you think people will ever not see me like this?" I didn't answer right away, because that wasn't a simple question. Then I said, "Eventually." She looked at me like she was waiting for more. So I added, "But not if you're expecting it to happen fast." She nodded slowly, then said, "Yeah." There was a pause. Then she said, "I didn't think it would go this far." I looked at her and said, "It didn't go far all at once." She frowned slightly like she didn't get what I meant. So I said, "It built up, every time you did it." She looked down. And this time, she didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't defend herself. She just said, "I know." Then she said something I didn't expect. I thought if I stayed on top, none of it would catch up to me. I said, "That's not how it works." She gave a small, tired laugh and said, "Yeah, I see that now." I started to leave again, but she said one more thing. "Do you think I deserved it?" That question just hung there, and I could tell she wasn't asking for sympathy. She just wanted the truth. So I gave it to her. I said, "Yeah." She nodded. Didn't look surprised. Didn't get mad. Just nodded. I said, "But that doesn't mean you stay like this forever." She looked up. I said, "It just means you have to actually change." She held my gaze for a second, then said, "I'm trying." And for the first time, it didn't sound fake. After that, I left. For real this time. Months went by, and things slowly shifted. Not back to how they were, but different. Better in a way. Kayla didn't try to control people anymore. Didn't take shortcuts. Didn't cut people out. She kept things simple. Did her own work. Helped when asked. Didn't force anything. And people noticed. Not right away, but over time. Small things. Like someone saying, "Can you check this for me?" Or letting her join a group without hesitation. Not because they forgot what happened, but because she wasn't acting like that anymore. That's the part nobody talks about with karma. Everyone thinks it's just punishment. Like something bad happens and that's it. But it's not. It's a reset. You get shown exactly what you did. You feel it. And then you get a choice. Stay the same or fix it. Kayla got hit with it hard. Grades dropped. Reputation gone. Trust gone. Everything she tried to protect, gone. But after all that, she actually changed. Not overnight. Not perfectly. But enough. And me? I don't think karma is fake anymore. Because I saw it happen step by step. No guessing. No maybe. Just actions. And consequences. Coming back around. Exactly how they were sent out. So yeah, what comes around goes around. Not because someone's watching. Not because of luck. But because eventually, you run into the results of your own choices. And when you do, you either learn from it, or you repeat it. She learned. And that's why this story doesn't end with her losing everything. It ends with her understanding why she almost did.